lecture. The first 2 weeks we've kind of learned about our own organization. You guys have done a fantastic job. A lot of you have marketing type minds, which is nice. The next 2 weeks we're going to spend learning about our consumers. This week it's going to be a kind of a theoretical type of look at why people consume sport. And then next week we'll be learning more about our target markets. And so what I'll try to do, this is going to be kind of a longer lecture. I'm going to try to give some examples as we go through this. So some key things we're going to want to know as we go forward are who our consumers are, who they've been in the past, who they are now, what it could look like in the future. And particularly next week, we'll talk a lot about in terms of demographics. What are their age? What's their sex, income? What are their opinions, their lifestyles? Where do they reside? Where do they work? And where do they come into contact with our product? We want to know how they've been exposed to our product. Why do they become involved with it at all? Are they committed to our product? If not, if they are committed, why? And so, like I said, this week is going to become more about the kind of theoretical side of this. So, the first big aspect of this you have to understand is how people become socialized to something. And what that really means is how do people kind of develop skills or knowledge about it, learn how to play it, how to watch it. And it's a two-way kind of interaction between the individual and their environment. And so there's really three main ways somebody can become socialized to sport. And for the most part, these will make sense and they're pretty easy to understand. So the first one is through a behavioral involvement. And so this is hands-on. So this is actually participating in the sport itself. So it could be watching it, listening to it, cheering for it, being in a venue, watching it on TV. It's a hands-on type of involvement. And the NFL kind of did a study on this and learned that basically most of their people engaged through the NFL or became associated or socialized to the NFL through watching it on TV. Another way is through a cognitive involvement. And this is where I maybe don't play it at all. I've never played it. I've never been associated with it, never coached it. But I know a lot about it, and I get my information through the media. So this is kind of the ESPN effect, where you can find people who cover sports for ESPN who have never played the game, but they're an expert. They're an expert on the sport. And then the third way is the effective involvement, and this is kind of the attitudes, the feelings, emotions. This is kind of when I become socialized through things like tailgating, pep rallies, maybe through creative media on YouTube or social media, advertising. And so I become a fan of the sport just through the fanfare of the sport, seeing what it's all about. And so the next aspect of this is once we become socialized, we have to start to understand what our commitment is to it. And this is basically how often and how intense we're involved. And this is has a direct impact on how much money we spend. Okay. If you are a diehard fan, then you're going to not only watch it, potentially go to it, but you're going to spend money on it. And so really commitment is, it can be segmented based on how involved you are. And so we have to kind of continually try to address commitment, okay, through research and trying to figure out, well, what makes people more committed, what makes them want to become a season ticket holder, what makes them want to go from watching it on TV to actually watching it in person. And so there's a lot of research about this, and this is something we're going to look at in the future. And so really when it comes to the determining commitment, we look at it from an environmental concept, which is meaning the external type influences, and we look at it from an individual factors, which is more of an internal influences. And so from an external, there's a couple of things that could really determine how much we're socialized to sport. One might be our significant others. So this is our friends, our family, our spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend. How much do they watch it? Okay, or are we more willing to watch it if we're with them? Okay. Sometimes people will literally go to games and buy a ticket to a game just to go with their significant other. Then there's the kind of cultural norms, the values. This is very much determining or dependent on kind of where you live. Some of it might have to do with weather. There's just some, obviously we're not socialized as much to hockey in the South because most of us can't grow up playing it. Okay, we don't have any ice. There's certain parts, the Southeast is highly socialized to football, particularly college football. If you look at the Midwest and Northeast, they're highly socialized to wrestling because it's a hugely popular sport. And so there will be some parts of the country that have a more difficult time getting sports to catch on. Class is another aspect. Social class has a huge deal, and sometimes it's a stereotype. So a lot of people will stereotype golf as an upper middle class white sport. And there's some truth to some of these things, but we want to shy away from basically negating or doing away or not giving a potential target market a chance to become a fan just because we think it doesn't meet what it is that we're doing. Prime example, NASCAR. NASCAR, if you ask most people how they identify NASCAR fans, they would say Southern, maybe lower middle class, when that's exactly the opposite. Most of them are very well off and do make significant income because it does cost a lot of money to be a fan of that sport. Obviously, race and ethnicity have a deal. They have a part in this. There are certain sports that have been geared toward different races and ethnicities. We have to understand that. Gender and sexuality. Again, certain sports have taking longer for women to become involved in. A couple things, some research done recently. Men are more emotionally involved in viewing a sport. Men are more engaged in pre-game rituals in sport. Women are more likely to watch sport because others were watching. Women are more likely to work while they're watching sport. So we have to kind of understand how gender affects sport and understand that there's a lot that goes into this. Kind of our culture and where we are in a global marketplace. Again, there are certain sports that aren't as popular in other countries. And then there are certain sports that have made a push to become a global sport. So for instance, basketball is light years ahead of this. They have a lot of foreign players in the game, where you see football is just now starting to make that jump to playing games in other countries. And then the market behavior of sport firms. This is just more of how we look at wins and losses, okay, and how much that matters to us, okay. We have to understand that we have to develop some ideas of corporate responsibility, and how this fits in with college athletics is what we're already doing. We have to show that we're responsible out in the community, that we're going to do the right thing, and people want to be associated with organizations that do the right thing. As there's some individual factors we have to be aware of too: self-concept and social identity. This is just kind of our fandom, our association. We want to be a part of a fan base. We have to understand that stages in our life make an example. Are we in our college years? Are we empty nesters? Are we just getting our first job? It's gonna affect how much we can be involved in sport. How we choose to learn, our perception, our motivation, and our emotion around sport all make a difference. So how somebody learns about a sport is important to the socialization process. So this, number one, learn, feel, do. This is best way I can describe this is like getting bit with a golf bug. The more you learn about something, the more you want to do it. The second one, feel, do, learn, is more where something like what Nike would use, where they stir emotions in you to make you want to try something, try a product, try a sport, and then you learn more about it. And then the do, feel, and learn is more of you get kind of your hands-on type deal, and you get your first taste of what that's like, and you want to do it more. So like an NFL fan experience, or going to the College Football Hall of Fame and kicking a field goal. That's kind of where that comes into. Perception makes a big difference, guys. It's sport consumers come into contact with sport a whole bunch of different ways, and we have to engage all those senses. Sometimes it's watching it. Sometimes it's being involved with our hands on it. Sometimes it's seeing others play it. It's the emotional side of advertisements, of promotional videos. And this plays even into the smallest organization, guys. When somebody comes into our venues, is it clean? Do we have an environment that's good they would want to bring their family into, that they would want to bring their significant other into, where they want to come back to that? Then you get kind of the motivation for why does somebody become interested in a sport? Sometimes it's all about them. It does nothing to do with winning. It's more that it's just something that they want to perfect, a craft. Wanting to get good at golf, wanting to get good at the skill of tennis. Sometimes it is about fandom. Okay, it's about being able to bask in the glory of your team winning. Sometimes it's about their health and fitness. They want to join a health club because they want to get more in shape. Sometimes it's about just the fun, the tailgating, the experience. Sometimes it's about the people who actually were watching. I know you'd find it shocking, but there are people from both sexes that are interested just in watching the people play. They're attractive. Okay, there's certain sports that are taking advantage of this. Wanting to be part of a community. Okay, obviously, as bad as I dislike Alabama, they're a huge group of community of people who are really have a high level of fandom. There's this emotional side, this risk, this wanting to see your team win. This is where gambling comes into it. And then some people look at it as just an escape. It's just a way to get away from their life. And so that kind of goes into this idea of socialization, of motivation, goes into our ability to make decisions about what we spend our money on. Okay, so there's a reason that people are attracted to winning. Okay, there's a reason that people are attracted um, to big high profile athletes, to stars. Okay, and so some of that is we have to have something that's recognizable. Okay, people want to become more aware, so we have to give them a way of becoming more aware about our product, whether that's through social media, through our website. And then people are going to go through, once they recognize it and they're aware of it, they're going to go through evaluating what their choices are. Okay, and this is more of, what do we have to offer that they're looking for, and then they'll eventually make a decision, and they'll experience what it's like. But once people go in and experience what we have, they're going to make a decision on what it is we have to offer. Was it a great, satisfactory experience? And they're going to come back. Was it not? They're going to not come back. And then if it's kind of somewhere in between, we may have to work to get them back in, but they're likely going to reevaluate if that's a product worth it for them. And then for those of us who are going to go into things that offer different product choices, people make choices of what they want to do. Okay, it's no different than if you're buying a car, you look at the different lines of cars, whether it be a small compact car or an SUV. It's the same kind of deal when people start to consume sports. Some people are drawn to team sports. Some people like individual sports. Some people like sports that are inside, sports that are outside. Played with a ball, not played with a ball. Okay, and those things can start to evolve. Okay, you may be able to potentially recruit somebody who's a fan of hockey into liking lacrosse. You maybe could recruit somebody who's a fan of the roughness, the toughness of football to become a fan of wrestling. Okay, so there's this whole idea of us developing our brand and being able to convey that to people. What does it look like? What does our product look like? What is it like? If they've never watched it before, what's it similar to? Is it high paced? Is it fast paced? And so you see this even within a certain product. So the brand of NFL football is completely different than NCAA football. Watching the SEC play football to me is different than watching the Big Ten play football. Not that one is necessarily better or not, they're just different. And so there are a ton of studies out there, and we have to kind of learn to consume these studies and look at what's best for us, guys. And again, we will kind of take this a step farther out of the theoretical framework and put this into starting to develop our target markets next week. We have to at least have a baseline idea of how we each individually become socialized to our sport or become a fan of our sport. And then that's going to play a factor in how other people who come watch us become a fan of our sports.